The letter Shin, according to our sages, is the letter of fire. If you look at the Shin, it has 3 flames. And in fact, the word in Hebrew for fire is Eish, Aleph Shin. The Shin is the fire, and the Aleph is Avir, air. We know that fire cannot exist without air. So fire is Avir, giving life, as it were, to the fire to burn. The 3 flames of the Shin are very symmetrical. And it's considered one of the most symmetrical of all of the letters. It consists of a number of Vavs and Yuds. The flames are the letter Vav. The top of the Vav have a Yud. And they all meet at a base, which is a Yud. So altogether, there are 4 Yuds and 3 Vavs, making up the Shin. 7 components, which allude to the 4 mothers and the 3 fathers. And this is seen very beautifully in the Tefillin. On one side of the Tefillin is a regular Shin of 3 lines. And on the other side is a mysterious Shin of 4 flames that we really don't see in the Hebrew alphabet. But these 7 flames represent the patriarchs and the matriarchs. When you take these 4 Yuds and 3 Vavs, they equal together 58, which is the word Chen, grace. And in Kabbalah, the concept of symmetry is represented by this word grace. When something finds grace in our eyes, it means we're in tune with it. Everything is in the right place and feels good, and we can relate to it. That is what grace is. So there's a level of finding grace in other people's eyes, and there's a level of finding grace in God's eyes. The first time the word Chen appears in the Torah is when Noach found grace in God's eyes. V'Noach matzah chen be'enei Hashem. And it's pointed out that the word for Noach and Chen are the same letters, just reversed. They're in symmetrical form. Noach found grace in God's eyes. The root Shin appears in many words. Shin is the root of Shena, which is sleep, and also Sha'anan, which means serenity. So there's a feeling of calmness. On the other hand, Shin is the root of Shana, which means year, which means constant cycle and change. And the word for change itself, Shinui, comes from the root Shin. So here we have a paradoxical idea that sleep and serenity represents, we'll call it non-movement, and year and change, of course, is change. And as we saw in other letters, sometimes a root or a letter will encompass both opposite ideas. There's a verse that says, Ani Hashem lo shaniti. I am God, I have not changed. The word change, shaniti, is based on the letter Shin. So we see a beautiful idea here is God is unmovable, is permanent. And yet, all change only comes through God's activity, God's agency. So I am God, I have not changed, really means God is the immovable force that moves everything. And this is the idea of the Shin, which is fire. When you see a fire, it's always dancing, it's always moving, it's dynamic. And we are drawn to fire. We're drawn to the flame of a candle because there's a certain grace there. There's a certain serenity of sitting at a campfire and getting lost in the flames. The numerical value of Shin equals 300. When you take the name Elokim, which is the name of judgment, and you spell out the letters that make up the word, their full spelling. For example, the Aleph is Aleph Lamed Pei, etc. All of those letters equal 300. Elokim is Gematria 87, which equals Hateva, nature. So we see a beautiful connection that the fire of the Shin is the power and we'll call it the electromagnetic force within nature. Another beautiful example of the change and non-change as represented by the Shin we find in the mezuzah. The mezuzah is hung on the door of every Jewish home, every room, in fact, in the house, but especially the front door when we go in and we come out. And on it is the letter Shin. Now, the word mezuzah comes from the word zaz, which means to move. So therefore, when we go in and out of a house, many people kiss the mezuzah in order to represent our desire for God to protect us when we go out and we come in. Yet paradoxically, when we put up a mezuzah, the blessing that we say is likvoa mezuzah, to put the mezuzah in a permanent, unmovable place. So in many of the letters, we have seen this idea of run and return. And we see this in the shape of the Shin, and we see it in fire itself. Fire is always moving. It's running and returning. A meditation that can connect us to the letter Shin is to connect to our inner fire, to connect to the fire of the soul that wants to express itself, wants to be close to other people, and wants to be close to God.